Hello everyone, my name is Bill Peeps, and today I'm going to teach you how to create your very own game. For this tutorial, you will not need any prior coding experience to follow along. Everything has been catered towards helping you build a foundation by teaching the core concepts of programming and game design. To do this, we will be using a free online game engine called MakeCode Arcade. This engine uses a type of coding called block coding, which gives you all the building blocks that will allow you to create your game. Now with all that said, let's get started. Now to get to MakeCode, you're going to type arcade.makecode.com into the URL bar and hit enter. Once we are on the website, we are going to hit the big plus that says new project, and we will enter a name for our project and hit create. I'm going to name my project Ghost Chase. So before we actually get to creating the game, I want to talk a little bit about what we are using. Remember, MakeCode uses a type of coding called block coding. Block coding is nearly identical to traditional coding, except block coding is like a big word bank. So instead of typing out code from memory, you are given a code bank to draw from and create. On the far left side of the screen, you can see a device that we will use to play and test our game. A little to the right of that, we can see several tabs which make up our code bank. The first tab is named Sprites. Sprite is a fancy word for a picture that is used on a moving or modifiable object. So anything relevant to those kinds of objects will likely be found here. Next is the Controller tab. This tab stores code that relates to the player's inputs. This includes code for arrow keys and buttons, which you can program to each do different things. The Game tab has code relative to the current state of the game, like causing the player to win or lose the game. The Music tab has code relative to making background music or sound effects. The Scene tab has code relative to creating a map that the player would play on. The Info tab has code relative to game information, like the number of lives or the player's score. The Loops tab has code relative to repeating functions, or anything that you want to happen over and over again. The Logic tab has code relative to true and false statements. The Variables tab lets you create variables that you can use to store information. The Math tab has code that lets you do mathematical calculations and generate random numbers. As for the rest, we will not be covering those today. So, to start writing our code, we will first go to the Sprites tab, and we will grab a Set My Sprite block. First, we are going to rename this to say My Player. And what this will do is this will give us a variable that we can use to later reference our player sprite. And so now we are going to add a image to it. So we're going to click on this gray box, click on Gallery, and then you can select any of these images for your player. I am going to select this little guy right here. Once you have your image, you can click Done in the bottom right. And on the left, you should see your character pop up right here. Now currently we are not able to move them or do anything, so we're going to go to Controller, and we will grab the Move My Sprite with Buttons block. If you notice, a little error symbol will pop up next to the thing that says My Sprite. We need to change it to say My Player, so that way it properly references our player variable that we just created. And now I can move around. However, we can walk off of the screen. We do not want that. So we will go to Sprites, and we will get the Sprite Stay in Screen block. Now we will change it to reference the proper variable again, and now we have our player movement set up. So I think the next step is going to be adding a enemy to chase around the player. So we're going to follow the same steps that we just did for the player. We are going to change this, and we will make a new variable, and we will name this My Enemy. So this will be the enemy, and we're going to make them chase the player around. So we're going to click the sprite thing, and we're going to set this to a ghost. This is why we call it Ghost Chase. So for now, the ghost just kind of spawns in the center of the screen. It's nothing very interesting. And he doesn't do anything in particular. So I think there's a few things we need to do. Number one, we need to make it so that way the ghost will follow the player around. So if we go to Sprites, we can grab the Set My Enemy Follow My Sprite block. This may say something different, but this is how it works. So you add that there, and now make sure to change your variables. And now, if I move around, the sprite will follow me. But it is a bit fast, and I don't think that's a good speed for it. So we will click this plus button, and we can change the speed to 30. So now if we try the game again, we can see that's a lot better. That's a much better speed. But we want to lose health whenever the thing touches us. So if he spawns on top of us, we're not really going to have a chance to get away. So I think we should also set a random spawn position for this character. So that way, so I think we should set a random spawn position for this ghost so that way he's not right on top of the player from the beginning. So we can click on sprites and hit set my sprite position to X and Y. And you can pick a particular sprite position by clicking on the block and then clicking somewhere on this little mini screen. But what I like to do to add some randomness is I go to math and I get the pick random bubble. And so with this, I can place it inside the bubble and pick a random value from 0 to 160 for the x-axis and pick 0 to 120 on the y-axis. In between these two ranges, this will make it spawn anywhere on the screen. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to make it so that way the player will take damage whenever he's touched by the sprite. So we will go to sprites, we will scroll down, we will hit on sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind player. What we will do is we will go to info. We are going to set our player life to 3. We can put that here. And then we can go and grab the change life by -1. And we will put this inside of this overlap. Now what this function will do is every time a sprite that is of a player kind overlaps another sprite of kind player, it will run whatever code is inside of this. So now if you see our game, if the ghost touches us, we'll lose life, but it says the game over. That's because the way that games work is every time you see something new on the screen, that is an instance of code being run, and that is the game checking all of the variables. So every time the game updates, it checks whether or not the player sprite is overlapping another player sprite. And if that's true, we change the life by -1. So whenever we are dealing with this ghost, the ghost touches the player, it checks and changes the life, and then the ghost is still on top of the player. And then the very next frame, the same thing happens again and again until the player's dead. So how we are going to remedy this is we will go to sprites, and we will find a destroy my sprite block. And we will take the other sprite portion and we will set the destroy other sprite. Now, if we play the game and the ghost touches us, now the ghost dies and we only lose 1 HP. But this game wouldn't be very hard if there was only one ghost. So let's add more ghosts. So we will be using the game portion, and we will not use the on game update, but instead we will use the on game update every a certain number of milliseconds. I like to spawn ghosts every 2 seconds, so we will click the drop down and hit 2 seconds. And now we can take our ghost spawning code and we can move it over to the on game update. And so now every 2 seconds of game time, we will spawn a new ghost. You can see that over here. But we do have a bit of an error. That means if the ghost touch, we'll actually start losing life. And this is because while we have our sprite set to kind player, we have our enemy also set to kind player. And so as we spawn more ghosts, they are all set to kind player, meaning that this overlap function will occur when 2 ghosts touch each other. So to fix this, we will change this to on sprite of kind player overlaps other sprite of kind enemy. And then we will also change my enemy to say enemy. Now, if we go ahead and play our game, we should be able to see that when the ghosts touch each other, we no longer lose lives. And there we go. And if the ghosts touch us, we lose life. Perfect. Now, you can see that there isn't really any way to win the game just yet. So I think a good way to implement that will be to add a timer. So we will go to info and we will hit start countdown. We will set that to the end of our on start. So that way at the start of the game, we will start a countdown for 10 seconds. And then we will click on info and we will go and get a on countdown end. And we will go to the game tab and we will set the game over block to win when the countdown ends. So now if we play our game, we can test this. There you can see that successfully staying alive for 10 seconds will reward a successful game win. And so, if I want to share my project, I can click this button in the top right, and then I can set the title to whatever I want it to. I'm going to leave it as Ghost Chase though, and then I will click Share Project. Then, with this link, you can copy it and you can give it to anybody and they will be able to open up and play your game. And you can also see that when you open it up, there are these edit code and show code buttons. So you can pick up wherever you left off very easily. Or people can modify your code and make their own version of your game. So for that reason, I will be putting this link in the description of the video and you can use it as a reference to help you along if you want. And that is how you make a game in MakeCode Arcade. Now, I want you to know that this tutorial only scrapes the surface of the things you can do with MakeCode Arcade, and it's even smaller in the grand scheme of programming. So my challenge for you is to explore this tool, look through the code blocks available to you, and try to add another part of the game. Maybe you could extend the timer. Maybe you could add another enemy type. Maybe you could give the player a weapon and award them points for killing the ghosts. The possibilities are truly endless, and the direction you take this game is of your choosing. This is the first ever tutorial I've done, and it took me a lot of time to make, so if you've made it this far, sincerely thank you. I really do appreciate it. And if you have any questions or you just want to tell me how you feel about the video, let me know down in the comments. I'll respond to as many as I can. You can also find me either in my Discord or live on Twitch, and I'll leave both links in the description. But anyways, that's it from me, so stay safe and happy coding. Peace.